Don't look at him. Don't look at the door. Just keep your hand exactly the way it is and walk to the back of the store. She hadn't said a word, but her thumb was crushed inside her fist. The knuckles' white tendons pulling, and Jack Mercer had seen that signal twice before in his life. Both times he'd been too late. Not this time. Outside, a black sedan idled at pump 4. The driver hadn't moved in 6 minutes. He wasn't buying gas. He was counting seconds until she came back out. She was wearing long sleeves in Phoenix in August, 118 degrees. And nobody in that gas station had noticed a thing. Before we go any further, if this story hits you the way it's hitting me, hit that subscribe button right now and follow this all the way to the end. And drop a comment telling me what city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Jack Mercer had been riding since he was 19 years old. He had logged more miles on cracked desert highways than most men rack up in a lifetime of driving. He had seen bar fights and wildfire smoke and the kind of sunsets that make a man believe briefly that the world might still be worth saving. He had buried brothers. He had carried caskets. He had done things he wasn't proud of and other things he would do again without hesitation. But in 31 years on the road, nothing had ever stopped him cold the way that woman's hand did. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. She wasn't crying or stumbling or shouting for help. She walked through the glass door of the Sunoco station on Indian School Road like someone who had practiced walking normally for so long that normal had become its own kind of performance. Shoulders back, chin level, sunglasses on, which in Phoenix in August at 118 degrees wasn't unusual, except it was the inside of a gas station, and she didn't take them off. Jack's buddy Reno, standing beside him with a bag of beef jerky, was already talking about the route they'd take through Flagstaff. Something about road conditions and whether the Kai Bob Plateau would be passable. Jack heard maybe 4 words of it. He was watching her hand. She had her right arm crossed over her stomach, casual, like she was cold, which in itself was strange in this heat, and her thumb was tucked inside her closed fist. Not resting, not loose, pressed in, knuckles pale, the kind of grip that takes effort to hold. His stomach dropped 2 inches. "Reno," he said quietly, "and the elevation's going to be a problem if the pressure system moves in like they're saying, Reno." Something in Jack's voice cut through. Reno stopped mid-sentence and looked at him. Then he followed Jack's eyes toward the woman who was now moving down the snack aisle with slow, deliberate steps, like she was counting time, like every second in that store was borrowed. "What?" Reno said low. "That signal she's giving. You see her hand?" Reno looked. A beat passed. "The fist." "Thumb inside the fist," Jack said. "That's a domestic violence signal. It's been running on public awareness campaigns for the last few years. Women use it when they can't speak, when someone's watching." He paused. "When they can't ask for help out loud." Reno went very still. He'd known Jack long enough to know what that tone meant. "You sure?" "I've seen it twice," Jack said. "I'm sure." He set his coffee cup on the counter without looking at it. "Go find Tommy and Cass. Tell them I need eyes on that black sedan by pump 4. Nobody moves, nobody crowds, nobody does anything loud. We just watch." Reno was already gone. Smucked. Jack positioned himself near the front of the store, leaning against the refrigerated drink case angled so he could see both the woman in the snack aisle and the sedan through the plate glass window. The driver hadn't moved. He was a big man, Jack could tell that much, even from where he stood. Broad through the shoulders, dark hair close cut. He sat with one hand on the steering wheel and his phone in the other, but he wasn't looking at the phone. He was watching the door with a particular brand of patience that comes from practice, the kind of waiting that has teeth in it. Jack had met men like that before. They looked controlled because they were most of the time. But control in men like that was never about peace. It was about choosing when to stop being controlled. The woman came around the end of the aisle and Jack got a clearer look at her. Mid-30s maybe, brown hair pulled back tight. The sunglasses were big, deliberately big, the kind that covered more than just eyes. Her sleeves were down past her wrists. In August, in Arizona, she picked up a bottle of water and held it for a second without moving. Then she set it back down. Then she picked it up again. She was stalling. Jack understood immediately. She wasn't shopping. She was buying herself time. Every second in this store was a second not in that car, not with him. He walked toward the back of the store slowly and stopped about 8 feet from her. Not close enough to crowd, not far enough to seem absent. "Hot one out there," he said easy, like he was talking to nobody in particular. She flinched, barely just a small tightening of her shoulders, but he saw it. "Yeah," she said. Her voice was flat and carefully modulated, the way voices get when a person has trained themselves not to let anything slip through uninvited. "You from around here?" he asked, just passing through. "Us too." He glanced at the window just briefly. Long drive ahead. She hesitated. That half second told him everything. "Not too long," she said. Jack nodded like he believed her. He looked down at the shelf in front of him, picked up a bag of trail mix he had zero interest in, and said quietly without turning his head, "If you need help, say the word, and we'll make sure you can walk out of here safe. Nobody outside needs to know." The silence that followed was so complete he could hear the refrigeration units humming. She didn't move. "I don't know what you mean," she said. "Okay," Jack said simply. "I'm not going anywhere." He stayed where he was. He didn't push. He didn't follow her when she drifted to the next aisle. He just stayed. Outside, Tommy Cruise had positioned his bike between the pump island and the sedan without it looking like anything deliberate. He was cleaning his visor with a cloth slow and methodical every few seconds, glancing sidelong at the driver. The driver had noticed him. Tommy could tell by the way the man's head had shifted just slightly, just enough. The phone screen had gone dark in his hand. His other hand had left the steering wheel. Tommy kept cleaning his visor. Cassandra Cass Holloway sat down on the low concrete curb on the far side of the parking lot, boots flat, forearms on her knees like she was just resting in the shade. But her eyes were tracking the sedan with the precision of someone who had spent 8 years working loss prevention before she ever touched a motorcycle. She pulled out her phone and typed to Jack, "Driver is engaged. He knows we're here. He doesn't like it." Jack's phone buzzed in his pocket. He read the message without taking it out of his vest, glancing at the screen through the fabric. Old habit, he looked up. The woman was standing at the end of the aisle. She wasn't looking at the shelves anymore. She was looking at him. Her name was Lena Carter, and she had stopped trusting strangers the way you stop trusting stoves after you burn yourself badly enough. It wasn't a decision, it was conditioning, and conditioning is hard to argue with when it lives in your nervous system instead of your mind. But this man, this big road-worn man in a cut vest who smelled like motor oil, in the particular kind of sun that only lives on open highway, had not moved toward her. He had not raised his voice. He had not tried to help her in any of the aggressive, well-meaning ways that help can become its own kind of trap. He had just said, "I'm not going anywhere." And something in her chest had cracked a little at that. She took one step toward him. "How many of you are there?" she asked, just barely above a whisper. "5, Jack said. "Outside, nobody's going to do anything without your word." Lena pressed the water bottle against her stomach right where she'd taken a hit 2 nights ago that had left a bruise the size of a dinner plate under her shirt. "He'll see," she said. "He'll see 5 bikers at a gas station," Jack said. "That's all he'll see." A pause. "He's been doing this for 3 years, she said, and then stopped like she hadn't meant to say that, like the words had escaped without permission. "I know," Jack said. She looked at him sharply. "You don't know." "No," he agreed. "You're right, I don't. But I know you didn't wear long sleeves in August because you were cold." Lena looked away, her jaw tightened. The smallest tell in the world, but Jack had been reading people in difficult moments for a long time. He recognized the look of someone deciding whether to believe that safety was real or just another bait. "My phone's in his glove box," she said. "He took it this morning." "Do you want to use mine?" Another silence. Longer this time. "And there's a number," she said, "a hotline. I saw it on TV a few months ago. I memorized it because She stopped. "I didn't think I'd need it." Jack pulled his phone from his pocket and held it out to her without a word. She stood in the snack aisle of a fluorescent-lit gas station in the middle of the Arizona desert, holding a stranger's phone, dialing a number she had memorized 6 months ago on a night when she had sat in her car in a Walmart parking lot for 40 minutes because she wasn't sure what was waiting for her when she got home. The line picked up on the second ring. "National Domestic Violence Hotline, this is..." Lena turned toward the shelf and lowered her voice until it disappeared completely. Jack watched the sedan through the glass. The driver had his door open now, 1 foot out. Jack's phone buzzed. Tommy. He's getting out, Jack typed back. Hold. The driver, Derek Vance, though Jack didn't know his name yet, stood beside his car with his hand on the roof and looked at the store. He was wearing a gray shirt pressed in dark slacks. He looked for all the world like a man who had stopped to get gas with his wife and was just wondering what was taking so long. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who was very, very good at looking like something he wasn't. Cass moved to intercept without being obvious about it, drifting toward the air pump station, putting herself between Derek and the front door. Tommy stayed near the bikes but stood up from his crouching position. Inside, Lena was still on the phone. Can you stay on the line with me? Jack drifted toward the door close enough to step out if needed. Derek Vance had the kind of face that read as trustworthy, and he knew it. Square jaw, calm eyes. He had worked private security long enough to understand that how you entered a room mattered more than almost anything else. Confidence signals legitimacy. Most people never questioned a man who walked like he owned the floor. He walked toward the door. Cass stepped into his path, accidentally on purpose, fumbling with her sunglasses case. Oh, sorry, she said brightly. Dropped it. You good? He stopped, looked at her. His eyes didn't smile with his mouth. Fine, he said. Hot one today, right? Cass continued, bending to pick up the case with complete manufactured obliviousness. I swear every year I think last year was the hottest, and then, excuse me, Derek said, clipping the words short and moved around her. Cass straightened and caught Tommy's eye across the lot. She made a small motion with her chin. Tommy walked toward the door from the other side. Inside, Jack heard the door open. Derek walked in. The first thing Derek did was scan the room. Floor to ceiling, left to right in under 3 seconds. Jack clocked it immediately. Professional assessment, the kind that gets trained into people. Security contractor. Military background, maybe. This man was not someone who panicked. This man was someone who adapted. His eyes found Lena in the aisle before he looked at anything else, like a compass needle finding north. And then they moved to Jack. Jack didn't look away. Something passed between them. Quick, wordless, the way understanding can arrive between men who have both spent time in dark places. Derek's expression didn't change, but something underneath it did. Some recalculation happening behind steady eyes. He walked toward Lena. Hey, he said, voice warm. Warm was its own kind of weapon. What's taking so long, babe? I thought we wanted to make it to Sedona before dark. Jack watched Lena's body change when he got close. Her shoulders curved in. Her chin dropped half an inch. 600-pound weight falling back into a familiar groove. Just getting water, she said. Cool. Derek put a hand on her back lightly and looked directly at Jack while doing it. Who's your friend? Jack held out a hand. Jack Mercer, he said, just passing through. Your wife offered to grab me a water bottle while I was checking on my bike. Derek's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's Lena for you. Always trying to help people. Good quality, Jack said. It is. Derek's hand on Lena's back shifted almost nothing, almost invisible, just a slight increase in pressure. We should get moving, honey. Don't want to lose the light. Lena started to move. Jack said, That's a great ring, by the way. Completely casual. He was looking at nothing in particular. My sister's looking for something similar. Where'd you two get it? It was meaningless. Completely meaningless. Just words designed only to pause the moment by 3 seconds. But those 3 seconds mattered because Lena's phone, Jack's phone, still in her hand, buzzed once with a callback confirmation from the hotline, and she managed to slip it into her own pocket before Derek could see it. So they walked out together, all three of them. Tommy was at the door, not blocking it, just there. And then Reno materialized from around the side of the building, and Cass was at the pump island, and 2 other riders were sitting on their bikes, looking at nothing in particular. 5 of them, positioned without looking positioned. Derek stopped. He did the scan again, this time slower. You all together, he asked Jack. Casual question. Iron underneath. We ride together, yeah, Jack said. Good crew. Derek said nothing for a moment. Then he guided Lena toward the car with his hand on her back. Jack walked in the same direction toward his bike, same pace, same direction. Lena glanced at him once, just once. He gave her one small nod. She got in the car. Derek got in the driver's side and the doors closed. For a moment, nothing happened. The engine was still running. The air between the car and the bikes was so hot it shimmered. Jack stood at his motorcycle hand on the tank and waited. His phone buzzed in Lena's pocket inside that car. He hoped to God she'd find a moment to answer it. Tommy appeared at his shoulder. "She's still in there," Tommy said quietly. "Yeah." "What do we do?" Jack looked at the sedan. "We wait." Bang. 12 seconds later, the driver's side door opened again. Derek Vance got out of the car. He wasn't running the charming demeanor now. The mask had shifted, not gone, but adjusted. His hands were loose at his sides, and he was looking directly at Jack. "I'm going to be real with you," he said, walking toward him. "I don't know what she said to you in there, but my wife has a history of misrepresenting situations. She's been through some things. Mentally, I mean. Her doctors would tell you." "I don't think I asked," Jack said. Derek stopped. His jaw moved just once like he was chewing something. "She's my wife," he said. "She needs help. I can provide for her, not this." He gestured at the bikes, the crew, the whole tableau. "Sir," said a new voice. Everyone turned. 2 police cruisers had rolled into the lot. Someone had made the call, Jack didn't know who, and a uniformed officer was walking toward them, partner behind him, hand near his belt. "We got a call about a potential disturbance. Everyone okay here?" Derek's face transformed. The mask came all the way back down, smooth, controlled. A man relieved to see law enforcement, not threatened by it. "Officer, thank you for coming," he said, stepping forward. "I'm actually concerned myself. My wife has been approached by these individuals, and I'm worried that—" "Sir, step back, please," the officer said. "I'd like to speak with everyone separately." He looked at Jack. "You stay where you are." Jack put his hands up open and nodded. The officer moved toward the sedan. Lena was sitting in the passenger seat, window up. The officer knocked on the glass. She opened it. "Ma'am, are you okay? Is there anything you need?" A long silence. The whole parking lot held its breath. And Lena said, "I'm fine." Jack closed his eyes for 1 second. 2 words. 2 words and a lifetime of conditioning behind them. 2 words spoken by a woman whose thumb had been pressed inside her fist because she was terrified, who had dialed a hotline from a borrowed phone, who had looked at him in that aisle like a person who had not been looked at with kindness in so long that kindness itself felt dangerous. "I'm fine." He had expected it. He had known it was coming, and it still landed like a stone. Done. Derek, sensing an opening, moved toward the car with the confident stride of a man whose narrative was winning. "Like I said, she's going through some difficulties." "Sir," the officer said again. "One moment, please." The officer spoke quietly to his partner. His partner moved to Derek's side. Then the first officer crouched down to Lena's window level. "Ma'am," he said softer this time, "nobody needs to hear your answer. I just need to know if you're safe." The question fell into the space between them like a pebble into deep water. Safe. What a word to have to define, Lena thought. She had been married to Derek for 4 years. She had been not safe for 3 of them. She had stopped tracking the incidents after a while because tracking them meant they were real, and making them real felt like something she couldn't afford to do. Was she safe? She looked at the officer, young, maybe 28. He was trying. She looked past him at the bikers, the road-worn strangers who had done nothing but be present, who had offered without demanding, who had placed themselves between her and whatever came next without making it about themselves. She looked at Jack Mercer, who was watching her from 20 feet away, with an expression that held no expectation in it. Just attention. Just "I see you." "No," she said. 1 word, barely audible. But the officer heard it, and the second officer heard it, and Jack heard it from 20 feet away because he had been listening for nothing else. "No," Lena said again, a little stronger. "I'm not safe. I haven't been safe in a long time." Derek took 2 steps toward the car. Reno stepped into his path, not aggressive, not threatening, just a wall. The officer stood and turned to Derek. "Sir, I'm going to need you to stay back." Derek looked at Reno, at the officer, at Jack. His composure fractured just slightly, just at the edges, and for 1 brief second, the thing underneath it showed through. Not rage, not panic. Calculation. A man rerouting in real time. "This is absurd," Derek said. "She needs me. Sir, hands where I can see them." And just like that, the parking lot of the Sunoco station on Indian School Road changed shape. The next hour moved like water, slow in some moments, rushing in others. A second police unit arrived. A female officer came to speak with Lena, who had gotten out of the car, finally standing on her own 2 feet in that brutal August heat, and was telling the truth for maybe the first time in 3 years. Not all of it, not yet, but the beginning of it, the edge of it. Derek was separated to the far side of the lot, standing with 2 officers still talking, still narrating, still working the room even when the room had stopped listening. Jack sat on the curb and watched. Cass came and sat next to him. "She did it," Cass said. "Yeah, that took guts. Everything she's done for the last 3 years took guts," Jack said. "Surviving takes guts. We just showed up." Cass looked at him sideways. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Making it smaller than it is." He didn't answer that. Across the parking lot, he watched Lena talking to the female officer, watched the slight tremor in her hands, watched her lift her sleeve slowly, like something private was being made public against the will of every instinct she had, and show the bruises on her forearm. The officer wrote something down. Lena pulled her sleeve back. She looked up and caught Jack's eye across the distance. She didn't wave, didn't nod, just looked for a long moment at the man who had stayed put and handed her a phone without asking for a reason. Then she looked away and kept talking. A woman Lena had contacted before any of this unfolded. Her sister Mara reached through the hotline's callback, and a borrowed phone arrived within 30 minutes. A small, sharp-featured woman who got out of her car looking like someone who had made this drive afraid before and was done being afraid. She went straight to Lena, put her arms around her, and didn't let go for a long time. The officers in quiet conversation near the cruisers were debating what could be done, what evidence existed, what charges might hold. Derek had stopped talking. He was watching the sisters with an expression Jack recognized from a different context, the look of a man watching something slip out of his control and calculating whether he could still stop it. He couldn't. An officer approached him, and Derek turned to face him with a measured calm that was extraordinary in its discipline. He answered questions with careful words. He mentioned attorneys. He mentioned his wife's mental health history, her instability, her prior episodes. He was building a counter-narrative in real time, stacking it brick by brick. Jack watched this from his curb seat and felt something cold settle in his chest. This man had done this before. Not just the violence, the talking after, the storytelling after. He had rehearsed it. You don't speak that smoothly in a crisis unless you have already had the crisis before. "How many times?" Jack said quietly to no one. Reno had returned and was sitting on the curb beside him now. "What?" Reno asked. "He's too good at this part," Jack said. The explanation after. He's done this exact thing before, different parking lot, different officers, maybe different woman. But this exact, he gestured at Derek's fluid, confident testimony. He's practiced it. Reno was quiet for a moment. "You think there are others?" "I think," Jack said, "we're looking at the tip of something." A patrol officer came over to them and took Jack's statement. He answered everything clearly and without editorializing. He described what he'd seen, the signal, the sleeves, the sedan, the sequence. He gave his contact information. He shook the officer's hand. When the officer walked away, Jack sat back down. His phone was returned to him by Mara as she and Lena prepared to leave. Mara handed it to him without fanfare. "She said to tell you, thank you," Mara said. "She's not going back." "Good," Jack said. Mara looked at him like she was waiting for something more. When it didn't come, she nodded like that was actually the right answer and went back to her sister. Jack watched them get in Mara's car. He watched the car pull out of the lot and disappeared down Indian School Road into the shimmering afternoon. He watched Derek Vance across the parking lot watching the same car leave, and something passed over Derek's face, not loss, not fear, not grief, just a very quiet fury being smoothed down into patience. That look stayed with Jack long after the patrol cruisers left, long after his crew saddled up and rolled back out onto the highway, long after the Sunoco station was just a heat-blurred shape in his mirrors. That look, like a man making a promise to himself. So, that night, Jack was sitting in the lot behind the motel when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Local Phoenix area code. He answered. Silence at first, then, "It's Lena." He sat up straighter. "I got your number off the hotline callback," she said. "I hope that's okay." "More than okay," he said. Silence again. Not empty silence, the kind that has weight in it, content like she was trying to figure out where to start. He waited. He has done this before, she said finally. What happened today? Not exactly, but the same. I found things months ago. Notes I wasn't supposed to find. A name I didn't recognize. I asked him about it once and She stopped. I never asked again. Jack felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. What kind of notes? He asked carefully. I don't know exactly, she said. I was scared to look too long. But there was a name, a woman's name, and a date. And he had a photograph, just the one. A woman I didn't know. A beat. I think, Lena said quietly, there were others before me. Jack sat in the dark parking lot of that Phoenix motel with the desert heat pressing in from all sides, and he held the phone against his ear, and he thought about Derek Vance's face as Mara's car drove away. That particular quiet, that patience, that look of a man who was not finished. Lena, he said, are you somewhere safe tonight? I'm with Mara. She has a security system and good, he said. Stay there, don't go anywhere alone. Okay. And Lena, yeah, that took something what you did today. I want you to know that. Another silence. When she spoke, her voice had the texture of something that had been held underwater for a very long time and was only now breaking the surface. I memorized that hotline number 6 months ago, she said. I kept telling myself I was being dramatic, that it wasn't that bad, that I was being too sensitive. You weren't. No, she said. I wasn't. She hung up. Jack sat with the phone in his hand and looked up at the sky, orange-black at the edges, the city glow eating most of the stars, and felt something that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite grief, but lived in the same neighborhood as both of them. He has done this before. I think there were others. 9 words, he turned them over. He turned them over again. Somewhere across this city, Derek Vance was sitting in a police station or a lawyer's office or his own kitchen building the next version of the story, smooth and practiced and designed to survive. And somewhere out there, maybe close, maybe not, were other women who had run into Derek Vance before Lena did, and maybe had not walked away. Jack set his phone down on his knee. He wasn't going to Flagstaff, not yet. Jack didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of the motel bed with his boots still on, and Lena's 9 words running on a loop through his head like a song he couldn't turn off. He has done this before. I think there were others. He kept hearing the way her voice had gone quiet at the end, not from fear, but from something harder than fear, from the particular exhaustion of a person who has been carrying a truth too heavy to name, for so long that naming it finally felt less like relief and more like collapse. He pulled out his phone at 2:17 in the morning and typed a name into the search bar. Derek Vance, Phoenix, Arizona. What came back was clean, almost too clean. LinkedIn profile, private security consulting. Photo of a man in a dark blazer at some kind of industry event, smiling at the camera with the easy confidence of someone who had been photographed a lot. Former contractor with 3 different firms, 2 of them government adjacent. A couple of professional recommendations, meticulous, strategic, calm under pressure. No criminal record that showed in public search. No court filings, no news stories. Jack stared at the screen for a long time. Nothing is as dangerous as a man who has learned how not to leave a record. He closed the browser and called Reno. Reno picked up on the 3rd ring, voice thick with interrupted sleep. What time is it? Late or early, one of the two. Jack, I need you to think back to something, Jack said. You remember Eddie Marsh guy who used to work dispatch for the Chandler PD before he retired? A pause. Big guy. Drives a green Ram pickup. That's him? You still got his number? Silence. Then, Jack, what are you doing? I'm not sure yet, Jack said honestly, but I need to ask him something. Do you have his number or not? Reno sighed the way a man sighs when he knows he's already agreed to something and is just working out the terms of his surrender. I'll text it to you. Thank you. You're not going to sleep, are you? Probably not. For the record, Reno said, I think this is a terrible idea. Noted, Jack said and hung up. He called Eddie Marsh at 7 in the morning, which was still early, but not insulting, and Eddie answered with the particular alertness of a retired cop who has never fully retired from the habit of being ready. Mercer, Eddie said without any preamble. Reno said you'd be calling. He told you already. He texted me 10 minutes after you hung up on him and said, and I quote, Jack's got that look again. Somebody needs to talk some sense into him. That sound about right. Only half right, Jack said. I don't need sense talked into me. I need a name run. You know I can't just... I know what you can and can't do officially, Jack said. I'm not asking you to do anything officially. I'm asking if you remember a name. Derek Vance, private security, Phoenix area. Maybe crossed paths with law enforcement in the last 4 or 5 years. Maybe more than once. He could hear Eddie breathing on the other end, thinking. Why? Eddie said. Because I think his wife wasn't the first, Jack said. And I think he's very good at making sure nobody connects the dots. Another silence, longer this time. Give me a couple hours, Eddie said and hung up. Jack was on his second cup of coffee at the motel's front office when his phone buzzed with a text from Lena. Did you mean it last night when you said you believe me? He looked at the message for a second. Then typed back yes. Every word. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why you don't know me? You don't know anything about my situation. You're a biker who happened to stop for coffee. Why does any of this matter to you? Jack set the coffee cup down and typed slowly, choosing each word. Because the first time I saw that signal, the woman using it didn't make it. I was 22, didn't know what I was looking at. By the time I figured it out, it was too late. I've been paying attention ever since. The dots appeared. Held for longer this time. I'm sorry, she wrote. Don't be, he wrote back. Just stay where you are today. Don't go home. Don't contact him. He's already texted me 14 times. Jack set his jaw. Don't answer. What if he comes to Mara's? Does he know where she lives? A pause that lasted long enough to mean yes. Tell Mara to call her local precinct and make them aware of the situation. Not because you need them right this second, but because you want the address logged. Okay. He started to put the phone down, then added, you did the right thing yesterday. That doesn't get smaller just because he's texting. No response for a minute, then simply, thank you.
Master Potter.
Eddie called back at 9:43. I didn't run anything official, Eddie said immediately. I want that on record. Understood. But I did make a couple phone calls to some people I know who have long memories. He paused. Derek Vance worked at private security in the Phoenix metro area for about 7 years. Did a stint before that with a contractor firm that did work in overseas locations. I won't say where, but you can guess. Very capable guy, very well connected. Nobody in law enforcement had anything formal on him. But, Jack said, because there was clearly a but coming. But a buddy of mine who worked domestic calls in Tempe about 4 years ago remembers his name. Said a woman filed a report, verbal altercation, no physical evidence, she recanted within 48 hours. He said Vance came in voluntarily to give his statement and was so cooperative, so calm, so helpful, that it actually made my buddy uneasy. Said it felt like a man who'd already written his own script. Jack said nothing, kept listening. And then, Eddie continued, there's a woman named Carla Mendez. She filed a missing persons report about 2.5 years ago for her friend, a woman named Rachel Torres. Rachel had been in a relationship. When Carla filed the report, she mentioned the boyfriend's name. He let the pause do the work. Derek Vance, Jack said. Derek Vance, Eddie confirmed. Investigation opened, went nowhere. Rachel Torres is still listed as a missing person. Vance was interviewed. Cooperative as ever. Said she'd left him weeks before she disappeared. He had no contact with her. Here is my phone. Look through it. I have nothing to hide. And Rachel Torres. Still missing, Eddie said. Case went cold about 18 months ago. The coffee in Jack's cup was cold. He hadn't touched it in 15 minutes. Eddie, he said, how many people know about this connection? The Tempe call, maybe a handful. The Torres case. It's in the record, but nobody's actively working it. A pause. This is what happens when a man is careful, Jack. Not violent in public, not threatening in public. Never gets arrested. Always has an answer. The cases stay separate because there's no one connecting them. Until now, Jack said. I want you to be very careful, Eddie said. You hear me? This isn't a bar fight. If this man is what you're suggesting he is, he didn't get away with it for this long by being careless. You start poking around, he's going to know. He already knows I exist, Jack said. That's what worries me, Eddie said, and hung up. Tch. Jack sat with what he knew and laid it out in order the way he'd learned to do in circumstances that required clarity over speed. There was Lena Carter, real name, real bruises, real fear, real escape. There was a domestic call in Tempe that went nowhere because the woman recanted. Classic. Standard. Almost a script in itself. There was Rachel Torres missing for over 2 years, last known connection being Derek Vance's case, cold as the ground under an Arizona winter. And there was Lena's voice from the night before I found a name. A woman I didn't recognize. And a photograph. He picked up his phone and called Lena. She answered on the first ring like she'd been holding it. "The notes you found," he said without greeting. "The ones months ago. Did they have a date?" "The photograph did," she said immediately. No warm-up, no hesitation. She had been waiting for someone to ask the right question. It was printed out on regular paper. In the bottom corner, there was a date stamp, August 2.5 years ago. Jack closed his eyes. "And the name you saw, was it Rachel?" Silence. A silence so complete and so sudden that it had its own sound. "How did you know that?" Lena whispered. "Because Rachel Torres was reported missing 2.5 years ago," Jack said, "by a friend named Carla Mendez, and Derek Vance was the last person she was connected to." The sound Lena made was not quite a and not quite a word. It was the sound a person makes when a fear they have been calling irrational turns out to have been the most rational thing they have ever felt. "Oh God," she said. "Lena, listen to me. You need to tell the detective who spoke with you yesterday everything you just told me. The notes, the name, the photograph, everything." "But I didn't keep the photograph. I found it and I put it back. I was scared. If he'd known I'd seen it." "You don't need the photograph," Jack said. "You need to tell them what you saw and when you saw it and where. That's evidence of his state of mind. That's evidence he had a connection to Rachel Torres. You understand?" "He'll say I'm lying," she said, and her voice had shifted now, not into fear exactly, but into the practiced resignation of a woman who had been told her version of events was wrong so many times that she had started to believe it, even when she knew she was right. "He always says that. He says I misremember things. He says I confuse what I dreamed with what actually happened. He's been saying it for years and, Lena," his voice was firm but not harsh, "he says that because it works. It's a strategy. It's not the truth." "I know," she said quietly. "I know that now. I spent 3 years not knowing it." "Then start now," Jack said. "Start today. Call the detective. Tell her everything." Her name was Detective Sarah Cole, and she had been working family crimes and cold cases for 11 years with the kind of quiet ferocity that never makes the news, because the people who do that work tend to be too busy doing it to talk about it. She had a desk covered in files and a coffee mug that said "World's Most Adequate Detective," which she had bought for herself as a joke that had stopped being funny somewhere around year 6. She got Lena's call at 10:15 that morning. By 10:40, she had pulled the Rachel Torres file. By 11, she was on the phone with the Tempe detective who'd handled the earlier domestic call and hadn't thought to connect it to Vance by name. By 11:30, she was sitting across from Lena Carter in Mara's kitchen. Mara presents standing near the counter with her arms crossed, watching Cole with the protective alert of someone deciding whether to trust and writing down everything Lena said in the careful, unhurried way of a woman who knew that the pace of an interview determined the quality of what came out of it. Lena told her about the photograph, about the name, about finding them in a drawer Derek thought she never opened, about what he'd said when she tried once carefully to ask about a woman named Rachel, watched his face go blank and calm, and heard him say that was a student from a self-defense class I used to help teach Honey. Why are you looking through my things and feeling in her gut that the answer was designed, that it was too fast and too smooth and too ready? Cole wrote it all down. When was this? Cole asked. About 7 months ago. And after that, Lena's jaw tightened. After that, I stopped asking questions. Because a pause. Then Lena pulled up her sleeve, same arm she had shown the officer yesterday in the parking lot. The bruising had shifted color overnight, yellowing at the edges of the purple. An older mark was visible beneath it, already faded to green. Cole looked at it for a long moment, didn't react with horror, didn't look away, just looked with the specific, careful attention of someone taking inventory. That was 2 nights ago, Lena said. Because I asked again, not about Rachel. I just asked where he'd been, just that. Cole set her pen down. I want to help you, she said, and I want to tell you something important first. Whatever you tell me today, I'm going to believe you. Not because I believe everyone automatically, but because I've been doing this long enough to know the difference between a woman who is confused and a woman who is afraid. Lena looked at her for a moment. Then she looked at Mara. Mara gave one small nod. Then I'll tell you everything, Lena said. And she did. Jack found out from Eddie an hour later that Cole had requested a formal review of the Rachel Torres file. That was fast. Faster than he'd expected. Something in him shifted, not quite relief, but the loosening of a tension he hadn't realized he was holding. He told Reno. Reno was quiet for a moment. Then, this is bigger than one gas station, isn't it? Yeah, Jack said. You going to stay in Phoenix? For a while? The guys are going to Flagstaff tomorrow morning. I know. Reno looked at him the way people look at someone they know well enough to know. Argument is pointless. You want any of us to stay? No, Jack said. Go, I'll catch up. And if you don't, then I'll see you in Albuquerque. Reno looked like he had more to say. He kept it to himself and walked back to the bikes. What Jack didn't know in that moment was that Derek Vance had spent the morning doing what Derek Vance did best when his control was threatened. He had already called 2 attorneys. He had already called a former colleague in law enforcement to ask casually whether there were any active inquiries related to his name, framing it as concern about being falsely targeted, which was the kind of framing that certain people responded to without thinking too hard about whether it was true. He had drafted a text to Lena that was 37 words long and had taken him 40 minutes to write because every word had been chosen for its plausible deniability. Words like worried and please and I love you, arranged in a pattern designed to look like grief and feel like a hand around a throat. He sent it while sitting in his own kitchen, perfectly calm, with a glass of water in front of him. Then he picked up a second phone, a number Lena did not have, and made a call. It's me, he said when it picked up. We have a problem. I need to know what's in that storage unit and whether anyone else has access to the building. The voice on the other end said something. Derek said, I'm not panicking. I'm planning. There's a difference. A pause. I need it handled by tomorrow morning, discreetly. You understand what I mean by discreetly. He hung up, finished his water, rinsed the glass and set it in the drying rack with the careful precision of a man who never left anything out of place. Jack was sitting in the motel parking lot at 2 in the afternoon when Cole called him. Mr. Mercer, she said, I understand you're the individual who first observed Mrs. Carter in distress yesterday. That's correct. And you have some background on Derek Vance beyond what happened at the gas station. I made some calls, he said. Nothing official, just conversations with people who have long memories. Cole was quiet for a beat. Mr. Mercer, I appreciate concerned citizens. I also appreciate when they're direct with me about what they know and how they know it. Fair enough, Jack said. Eddie Marsh, retired Chandler PD, he connected me with a name Rachel Torres, missing persons 2.5 years case cold. Last known contact with Derek Vance. A silence. Then, who else have you told about this? Nobody official, he said. You're the first. I'm going to ask you to keep it that way, Cole said. If there's a link between Vance and Torres, I don't want that link discussed outside of this investigation. The moment he knows we're looking at him for something beyond the domestic incident, he's going to move things. He might already be moving things, Jack said. A pause. What makes you say that? Because Lena found a photograph of Rachel Torres in his home 7 months ago and she's still alive, Jack said. He keeps a photograph of a missing woman in a drawer. That tells you something about how he thinks about it. And men who think about it that way, they don't leave things in drawers for long when the pressure is on. Cole said nothing for several seconds. He could hear papers moving on her end. I'm applying for a search warrant this afternoon, she said. It's going to be narrow because I don't have enough yet to go broad. But if you hear anything that suggests he's moving assets or destroying evidence, you call me directly. Not the non-emergency line, my direct number. I'm going to text it to you now. Copy that, Jack said. And Mr. Mercer. A pause. Don't go anywhere near him yourself, I mean that. Understood, Jack said. He meant it mostly. At 4:15, Mara called him from a number he didn't recognize. He answered anyway. He showed up, Mara said. Her voice was locked tight, controlled. On the street, not at the door, just on the street, Parked across from my house for about 20 minutes and then left. Jack stood up from where he'd been sitting. Did you call the police? I called the non-emergency line. They said without a direct threat, they couldn't do much. They took a report. Did Lena see him? I didn't tell her. She was in the back room on the phone with the hotline's legal advocate. I didn't want to. Mara's voice cracked for the first time. I didn't want her to panic. She's been holding herself together by a thread, Mr. Mercer, all day. She's been holding herself together and pretending to be fine, and I can see how much it's costing her, and You're doing right by her, Jack said. Keeping her calm is right. He was just sitting there, Mara said, in the car, just sitting there looking at my house. I know, Jack said. That's what he does. It's not random. It's a message. What does it mean? Jack thought about how to answer that honestly without making it worse than it already was. It means he hasn't decided to let go yet, he said. But it also means he's watching instead of acting, which means something is slowing him down. What's slowing him down? Cole's investigation, Jack said. He knows she talked to a detective. He knows there are people paying attention. He's recalibrating. Is that good? It buys time, Jack said, which is what we need. He told Mara to document everything, time, location, duration, any photos or video she could get from a window without being seen, and to send it to Cole's direct line. Mara wrote the number down without asking why she was writing it down. When Jack hung up, he sat for a moment in the quiet of his own breathing. The search warrant application was in process. Cole was pulling files. The Torres case was being dusted off. All of it moving at the speed of institutions, which was slower than Jack liked and faster than Derek probably expected. But Derek had been on the street in front of Mara's house, looking, recalibrating, yes, but not retreating. And somewhere, Jack didn't know where yet, but somewhere in this city was a storage unit that somebody was being asked to handle discreetly by tomorrow morning. He picked up his phone and called Eddie. I need one more thing, he said. Jack, does your Tempe contact have access to business license filings, storage facilities? A long exhale. What are you looking for? Any commercial storage property tied to Derek Vance, directly or through an LLC. He's careful about records, so it won't be in his name, obviously, but it'll be recent, probably the last 3 or 4 years. Can your guy check? You need to let Cole handle this. I did let Cole handle it, Jack said, and she's doing her job. But she's working inside the system, and the system has speed limits. I don't. He paused. I'm not going to go near anything. I just want to know where to point her. Another silence, then, I'll ask, no promises. Thank you, Eddie. He hung up. He sat back. Outside, somewhere in this sprawling desert city, a man in a pressed gray shirt was sitting in his kitchen making plans. Quiet plans. Patient plans. The kind a person makes when they are not afraid of being caught because they have not been caught before. And somewhere across town, a woman was sitting in her sister's back room, pretending to be fine because pretending had become the thing that kept her upright. And Jack Mercer, who had stopped for coffee at a Sunoco station on Indian School Road on what was supposed to be a ride to Flagstaff, was sitting in a motel parking lot with no badge, no authority, no official standing of any kind, just 31 years of watching the road and knowing what lived in the shadows beside it. He wasn't going to Albuquerque for a while. Some roads you start down and the road decides for you where you're going. Eddie texted at 7:42 that evening. 3 words and a street address. Found one. Industrial District. Jack stared at the address. Then he forwarded it to Detective Cole with a single message. Don't ask how I got this, but you might want to move on the warrant before morning. His phone stayed quiet for 11 minutes. Then Cole wrote back, I already did. Cole had already moved on the warrant. 4 words that should have let Jack sleep. They didn't. He lay on top of the motel bedspread at 11 p.m., staring at the ceiling with the particular wakefulness of a man whose mind had decided the night was for thinking, not resting. He kept coming back to Derek Vance on that street in front of Mara's house, parked, still, looking at a building that held the one person in the world who could dismantle everything he had built around himself. Not threatening, not acting, just letting her know he was there. That was the part that wouldn't let Jack go. The patience of it. The calculation, because a man who parks outside his wife's sister's house the same day his wife walks out of a gas station with police involvement is not a man who is panicking. He is a man who is sending a message he knows cannot be reported, delivering a threat that will never appear in any court record, doing damage the law cannot measure. Jack had known men like this, not many, but enough. They didn't break under pressure. They redirected it. His phone buzzed at 11:42. Cole. The storage facility warrant was approved. She said no greeting, no preamble. We execute at 6 a.m. I'm telling you this because you gave me the lead and because I need you to understand very clearly that you are not to be within 2 miles of that address when we go in. Understood, Jack said. I mean it, Mercer. I heard you the first time. A pause. Do you have eyes on Lena Carter tonight? Mara's place has a security system. They're inside. I drove past twice. Silence on Cole's end that said several things at once, the loudest of which was that she was choosing not to address the fact that he had driven past twice. Tomorrow is going to move fast, Cole said. Whatever we find in that unit or don't find, the situation with Vance escalates from this point forward. He's going to know we executed the warrant by 7 a.m. at the latest. What he does after that is the variable I can't predict. I can, Jack said. I'm listening. He'll go to Lena, Jack said, not physically, not right away. He'll call, he'll text, he'll use the language he's been using for 3 years, the kind that sounds like love and functions like a trap. He'll try to get her to doubt herself before she hears from you about what you found. He'll try to get back inside her head before the evidence gets to speak for itself. Cole was quiet. He's already started, Jack said. The texts yesterday, 14 of them before noon. Today she got a voicemail. I don't know what it said, but Mara told me Lena listened to it twice and then sat in the bathroom for 20 minutes. How do you know about the voicemail? Mara tells me things. She trusts me about as far as she can throw me, but she doesn't have anyone else to call at 11 p.m., so she calls me. I'm going to have a victim's advocate contact Lena first thing tomorrow morning, Cole said, before the warrant executes. I want her prepared for the possibility that what we find is going to be difficult. Jack said nothing. Mercer, Cole's voice shifted. If the Torres lead holds, if what we find in that unit gives us what I think it's going to give us, this case stops being a domestic violence investigation and becomes something considerably larger. And Lena Carter stops being a complainant and becomes a material witness in an active homicide inquiry. A pause. She needs to understand what she's walking into. She already knows, Jack said quietly. She knew before we did. That's been the hardest part for her, knowing I'm being terrible and having known nobody believe it. Cole exhaled. Get some sleep, she said. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She hung up. Jack looked at the ceiling for another hour and then finally slept. Bang. The call came at 6:47 in the morning. He grabbed his phone before the second buzz was finished. Cole said, "We're inside. You need to hear this." He sat up. What did you find? The unit is registered to an LLC called Vance Consulting Group. It's been rented for 3 years. A pause. He could hear movement in the background, other voices, low and professional. There's a burned phone, looks deliberately destroyed. Personal effects, women's clothing, a wallet with ID belonging to someone named Sandra Rowe, a pair of earrings, some photographs. Rachel Torres. Photos of multiple women. We're documenting everything now. And she stopped. Cole. There's a journal, she said, handwritten, about 60 pages. The silence between them had weight. We're going to need more than a morning, Cole said. This just became a very different kind of case. Jack stood up and went to the window. The Phoenix morning was already white with heat. You said Sandra Rowe. Who is she? I'm running the name now. The ID in the wallet is current. She's real. Cole's voice was careful and controlled in the way voices get when the person speaking them is feeling something they can't afford to feel yet. I need you to stay available today. And Mercer, do not tell Lena about the journal. I will speak with her. That conversation needs to come from me. Agreed, he said. One thing. What? Does Vance know yet? His attorney called us at 6:53, Cole said. So yes, he knows what's fine. Jack got dressed and drove to a diner 2 blocks from Mara's house without calling ahead. He sat at the counter and ordered eggs he didn't eat and coffee he did. And at 8:15, Mara texted him. She knows something happened. She won't stop asking me what. He wrote back. Tell her a detective will call this morning. Tell her to pick up. Is it bad? He stared at the question for a long time. Tell her to pick up, he wrote again. Mara sent a single period back, which was its own kind of answer. Nick. He was on his third coffee when the door of the diner opened and the air pressure in the room changed. He didn't turn around. He knew before he turned around, the way you sometimes know things from peripheral information, that the brain assembles before the conscious mind catches up the specific quality of the quiet that followed the opening door, the way the two women at the nearest table both shifted their eyes toward the entrance and then immediately away. He turned around. Derek Vance walked into the diner in a clean white shirt and dark slacks, unshaven in a way that read as distressed rather than careless. And he looked directly at Jack and with the expression of a man who had expected to find him here, which meant he had either followed him or had someone watching Mara's street and had done the math. Neither option was good. Jack put his coffee cup down. Derek pulled out the stool 2 seats down and sat. He didn't try to sit next to him. He maintained a distance that was public observable, impossible to call threatening. I'd like to talk, Derek said. Then talk, Jack said. Derek looked at the counter for a moment. He had the practiced body language of a man performing grief shoulders, slightly rounded jaw set but not clenched eyes that were working very hard to look sad instead of strategic. He was good at it. That was the most unsettling thing. He was genuinely technically good at it. I know what this looks like, Derek said. I know what she told the police. I know what you think of me. He paused. But I need you to understand that Lena is not well. I'm not saying that to discredit her. I'm saying it because I've watched her deteriorate for 2 years, and I've been trying to get her help, and she refuses, and I don't know what else I could have done. Jack looked at him. Your attorney called you this morning? Derek's composure flickered. 1/4 second. Recovered immediately. Yes. Then you know about the storage unit. I know they searched it. His jaw moved. Whatever they found, I can explain. I have an explanation for everything in that unit. Sandra Rowe was a client. She left personal property at my office 3 years ago, and I should have returned it. I should have called her, but I was dealing with Lena's episodes and Derek. Jack's voice was flat and even and left no room. Stop. Derek stopped. I'm not your audience, Jack said. I'm not the person you need to convince. And everything you just said, write it down, give it to your attorney, let them build whatever they want to build. He picked up his coffee cup. But don't sit in a diner 2 blocks from your wife's sister's house and tell it to me. Derek looked at him. Something happened behind his eyes. The performance dropped for exactly 1 second, and what was underneath it was not rage and not fear, but something colder than both, something patient. She's going to testify against me, Derek said quietly. You know that, right? And when she does, everything she says is going to be filtered through 3 years of a deteriorating mental state and You said that part already, Jack said. The mentally ill wife. You've been running that angle since the parking lot yesterday. He set the cup down. Here's the thing about that angle, Derek. It only works when nobody's looked at anything else yet, when the case is just her word against yours. But it stops working when there's a journal. This time the silence was different, longer, deeper. Derek Vance's face did something Jack had not seen it do in the short time he'd been watching it. It went still in the specific way that faces go still when the brain underneath has had to abandon one entire track and start over from nothing. He recovered. Of course he recovered, but it took him 3 full seconds longer than everything else had. I don't know what you think is in that journal, Derek said carefully. I don't know either, Jack said honestly, but you just told me something by the way you heard me say it. Derek stood up from the stool. He straightened his shirt. He looked at Jack one more time with those steady, calibrated eyes. You're making a mistake, he said. Getting involved in something you don't understand. Thinking you're protecting someone who doesn't need protection from me. I hope you're right, Jack said. I really do. Derek left. Jack waited until he heard the door, then pulled out his phone and called Cole. Vance just approached me in person, he said. 2 blocks from Mara's house. Knew I was here. Cole's response was immediate and sharp. Are you serious? He's having someone watch the street. You need to move Lena. I'm moving her right now, Cole said, and she was already talking to someone else before she finished the sentence. Get out of that diner, Mercer. Don't be where he expects you to be. He left a 20 on the counter and walked out. The move happened fast. Cole had a victim's advocate named Diane Calm Efficient, the kind of person who had clearly done this exact thing many times at Mara's door within 30 minutes. Lena and Mara were relocated to a second location, a safe house address that didn't exist in any file Jack had access to, which was exactly as it should be. Cole called him at 10:20. She's safe, Cole said. I spoke with her this morning about the storage unit. She held herself together better than I expected. She's been holding herself together under worse circumstances, Jack said. She told me something I need you to know about. Cole paused in the particular way that meant she was deciding how much to share with a civilian. The journal. We've had an initial look at the relevant sections. It's not a record of crimes. It's not that straightforward. It's more like documentation, observations. He wrote about women, not just Lena, descriptions of behavior, responses to certain stimuli, what worked, what didn't. She stopped. It reads like case notes, clinical in a way that is profoundly disturbing. Jack was quiet. There's a section that references Rachel Torres by first name, Cole said, and a section that references someone he calls only S, which given the ID we found belonging to Sandra Rowe, we believe is the same person. She paused. We don't know yet what happened to Sandra Rowe. Her name hasn't come up as a missing person, which means either she's alive and doesn't know her ID is in a storage unit or nobody reported her missing, Jack said. Or nobody reported her missing, Cole confirmed. I've got people running her name right now. Jack leaned against the side of his parked bike and looked at the sky. Flat blue, no clouds, the kind of sky that makes the world feel very large and very indifferent. Cole, he said, how long has he been doing this? She was quiet for a long time. The earliest entry in the journal is dated 6 years ago, she said. 6 years, the number landed in Jack's chest like something physical. 6 years of notes, of names, of clinical observations about what worked and what didn't. 6 years of women who had encountered Derek Vance, some of whom had survived with damage they could name, and others whose names were in a journal in a storage unit while their families waited for them to come home. I need you to stay available, Cole said. His attorney is going to move for a motion to suppress the storage unit evidence on the grounds that the warrant lacks sufficient probable cause. If it holds, we lose the journal. We lose the ID. We lose everything. She paused, which means Lena's testimony becomes even more critical than it already was. She'll give it, Jack said. You sound very sure. She memorized a hotline number 6 months ago, he said. She's been building towards this longer than she knows. Dial. At noon, Lena called him. He answered and she started talking before he could say hello. The detective told me about the journal, she said. She told me not to focus on it, to focus on my own testimony, to not let it overwhelm me. And I'm trying to do that, but... Her voice cracked and then steadied. There was a section about me. She wouldn't read it to me, but she told me it existed. He wrote about me like I was a case study. Like everything he ever said to me, everything he ever did was, Lena. His voice was quiet but firm. Breathe. I loved him, she said, and the rawness of it, the plain, undefended truth of those 3 words cut through everything. When we met, I thought he was the most attentive man I had ever known. He noticed everything. He remembered everything. He knew my coffee order the second time we met. He knew I was cold before I said it. He was always one step ahead of what I needed. Her voice fractured at the edges. And now I understand why. And I don't know how to hold both things at once. That I loved someone real, and that the real someone was using every minute of it. Jack sat with it for a moment. Those aren't 2 different things you have to hold, he said finally. They're the same thing. He was real. What he did was real. Your love was real, and his predation was real. They happened at the same time because that's how people like him operate. They don't love you and then become dangerous. The danger was always the architecture, and the love was the room they put you in so you wouldn't see the walls. Silence. I've never heard anyone say it like that, Lena said quietly. My sister, Jack said. Different man, same blueprint. 20 years ago. He paused. She's okay now. She's got 2 kids and a house in Tucson, and she teaches self-defense classes on Saturdays. A beat. It's a long road, but it's a road. Lena was quiet for a long time. Jack, she said, the detective told me there might be other women, not just Rachel. Yeah. Sandra Rowe. Do they know if she's... They're looking, he said. Cole's thorough. She'll find what there is to find. What if Sandra is... She stopped, tried again. What if I'm the only one who walked away? He didn't answer immediately. He didn't give her a false answer because she'd had enough false answers in her life, and she deserved the weight of the real one. Then you walk away for all of them, he said. You testify for all of them. You make sure what happened to them has a name and a face and a record. That's what walking away gets to mean. He heard her breathing, slow and deliberate, holding herself upright by the force of it. Okay, she said. Okay. At 2 in the afternoon, Cole called with news that made Jack's blood go cold. Vance's attorney filed an emergency motion 40 minutes ago, she said. Not to suppress the warrant. Something else. What? He's claiming Lena has a documented history of delusional episodes, and he's filing for emergency psychiatric evaluation prior to any testimony. He attached a letter from a psychiatrist's private practice connected to Vance through 2 degrees of separation, stating that Lena has shown persistent signs of delusional ideation in prior clinical assessments. Jack stood completely still. Let me guess, he said slowly. Assessments conducted by a doctor Derek selected and Derek paid for. That's what I'm looking at right now, Cole said. Yes. He's been building this, Jack, he said. This isn't a reaction to today. He's been constructing this for years, in case she ever walked out. He created a paper trail of her supposed instability so that if she ever accused him of anything, there would be a clinical record that said she couldn't be trusted. That's my read too, Cole said, and it's sophisticated. Most abusers don't plan this far ahead. He doesn't write a journal about it like it's case notes and not plan this far ahead, Jack said, and the anger in his voice was real, not performed. It lived in his jaw and his hands and the way he was gripping the phone. What does this do to the timeline? Can he actually delay her testimony? If the motion succeeds, potentially yes, Cole said. It goes to a judge this afternoon. I'm countering with our own forensic psychologist, but it's going to take time we may not have if he uses the delay to move on, destroying other evidence. Is there other evidence? We think so, Cole said carefully. The journal references a secondary location. We're not sure what it is yet. We're working through it. A secondary location. Jack turned that over. Cole, he told someone yesterday to handle something discreetly by this morning, before we found the storage unit, which means either they handled it in time or they didn't, Cole said. I know, we're moving as fast as the law allows. And he's moving as fast as no law stops him, Jack said. Cole was quiet for a second. The hearing is at 4. If the motion fails, we proceed as planned. If it succeeds, she stopped. Then everything gets harder. Jack drove to the courthouse. He didn't go inside. He sat in the parking lot and waited the way he had sat in the gas station parking lot 2 days ago, not acting, just being present, because sometimes presence is the only available currency. At 4:50, Cole texted him 2 words, motion denied. He exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Then his phone rang. Mara, he answered. He called the safe house, Mara said, and her voice was different, stripped of the control she'd been maintaining. I don't know how he got the number, but he called and Lena answered before I could stop her, and She took a breath. He was crying. He told her he was sorry. He told her he needed her. He told her everything that happened was because of how much he loved her and how scared he was of losing her. And Mara, is she okay? She's sitting in the kitchen and she's not speaking, and I don't know what she's... Put her on, Jack said. Silence. Movement. Then Lena's voice, very flat, very careful, like she was speaking from inside something. I know what he did, Lena said. I know you do. I know what the journal is. I know what the storage unit means. I know about Rachel. Her voice wavered and then held. I know all of it. And I still, for about 30 seconds, I still wanted it to not be true. I wanted the version of him on the phone to be the real one. That's not weakness, Jack said. That's 3 years. You can't turn 3 years off in 2 days. He knew that, she said. He called me because he knew that. Yeah, Jack said. He did. But I hung up, she said. Jack closed his eyes. Good, he said. And then I called the detective, Lena said. And I told her he contacted me. And she said they are going to trace how he got the number. A pause. I'm scared, Jack. I know. I'm going to testify anyway. I know that too. I just needed to say the scared part out loud to someone who wasn't going to tell me I shouldn't feel it. You're allowed to be scared, he said. Scared and going forward anyway is what courage actually looks like. It's not the absence of fear. It's doing the thing while fear is sitting right there in the room with you. She made a small sound, something between a laugh and a sob. You're surprisingly good at this for a biker who stopped for coffee. I've had a lot of years to think about what I should have said the first time. The line was quiet for a moment, a long, breathing quiet. Jack, she said, whatever they find wherever this goes, I need you to know something. What? I had already decided to leave, she said, before the gas station. I had decided that morning in the bathroom while he was in the kitchen making eggs like nothing had happened. I had decided I was leaving. I just didn't know how yet. She paused. And then I saw you looking at my hand, and I thought maybe there's a how. Maybe the how just walked in the door. He didn't say anything for a moment. I'm glad I stopped for coffee, he said. She almost laughed. Almost. Me too. After she hung up, he sat in the courthouse parking lot. The sun started its long descent toward the mountains, turning the whole sky copper and orange, the kind of sky that makes everything look like it's on fire. He thought about Rachel Torres. He thought about Sandra Rowe, whose name they still didn't know the end of. He thought about a journal with 60 pages and a first entry dated 6 years ago, and all the women who had existed in the time between that first page and this parking lot. His phone buzzed. Cole preliminary ID on Sandra Rowe confirmed. She's alive, filed a restraining order against an unnamed party 18 months ago in Maricopa County. We're contacting her now. He read it twice. Then secondary location and journal cross-referenced with county property records. We have an address. Executing warrant at first light tomorrow. He read that one 3 times. Tomorrow. First light, whatever Derek Vance had told someone to handle discreetly by this morning, either they had handled it in time or they hadn't. And tomorrow morning, Cole and her team were going to find out which. Jack sat with his hands on the steering wheel of his truck and thought about the word tomorrow and all the weight it was carrying tonight. He thought about Lena in a safe house kitchen, sitting in her own silence, having hung up on the man who had destroyed 3 years of her life and then called to try to take 3 more seconds of it back. He thought about Derek Vance somewhere in this city in a clean pressed shirt, running out of moves for maybe the first time in 6 years. And he thought not for the first time, not for the last time, about a young woman at a gas station 22 years ago, pressing her thumb inside her fist, looking at a 22-year-old Jack Mercer, who hadn't known what he was looking at. He had been paying attention ever since. He started the truck and drove back toward the motel. Tomorrow was coming whether he was ready or not. The call came at 5:58 in the morning. Jack was already awake. He'd been awake since 4, sitting at the small table in his motel room, with a legal pad and a pen writing down everything he knew in the order he knew it. A habit he'd developed in his 30s when he'd realized that the human brain under stress doesn't organize. It accumulates, and accumulated information without structure is just noise. He had 2 pages of notes and a 3rd page that was mostly questions when his phone lit up. Cole. Direct line. We're at the property, she said. Her voice had a texture he hadn't heard in it before, not quite controlled. You need to stay where you are. What did you find, Mercer or Cole? What did you find? A pause that lasted long enough to tell him it was bad before she said a single word. The property is a residential lot, vacant. It was purchased 3 years ago through the same LLC as the storage unit. She stopped. We brought cadaver dogs. The legal pad in front of Jack went out of focus. Where, he said. Under the garage foundation, she said. We're excavating now. We don't have confirmation yet, but the dogs are certain. He set the pen down very carefully, like it might break. How many, he asked. We don't know yet, Cole said. Then, Mercer, I need you to hear me. This is now a full homicide investigation. Multiple potential victims. I cannot have a civilian anywhere near this. I need you to stay at that motel, and I need you to not call Lena. She is going to hear from me, Cole said, in my timeline, after I have something definitive to tell her. Not a rumor, not a half-confirmed report. Facts. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the effort it was taking. Can I count on you? He looked at the legal pad. 2 pages of notes, 1 page of questions. Most of them were already being answered in a way he hadn't wanted to be right about. Yeah, he said, you can count on me. He hung up and sat in his motel room and waited, which was the hardest thing he had done in recent memory. At 7:43, Cole confirmed the first set of remains. At 8:11, she confirmed a second. At 9:22, she sent him a text that said only 3 confirmed, possibly more. Forensics will take time. Jack read that text and then set his phone face down on the table and looked at the wall for a while. 3 women. 3 women under the garage floor of a vacant lot purchased through an LLC in a name that would take a forensic accountant to connect to a man who had been sitting in police stations and attorneys' offices for the last 2 days building his counter-narrative with the practiced patience of someone who had done this so many times he had stopped being afraid of getting caught. The earliest entry in the journal is dated 6 years ago. He thought about that. He did the math he didn't want to do. 6 years. 3 confirmed victims. A missing woman named Rachel Torres, who was also in that journal. Sandra Rowe, who was alive and had filed a restraining order. Lena Carter, who had gotten out. And somewhere in those 6 years between the first page and the last other names, other entries, other women who existed in his handwriting as case studies in what worked and what didn't. Jack picked up his phone. He didn't call Lena. He called Reno. "You're on your way to Flagstaff," Jack said when Reno answered. "Just crossed into Prescott. What's wrong?" It wasn't a question. Reno had known Jack long enough to read the temperature of his voice. "The storage unit wasn't the worst of it," Jack said. Silence. "How bad?" Reno said. 3 confirmed, Jack said, under a property he owned. The silence on the other end was different this time. Denser. "God," Reno said quietly. "Yeah." "The woman from the gas station, is she?" "She's safe. She doesn't know yet." He paused. "I don't know how to be the person who helps her hear this, Reno. I don't know if I'm supposed to be that person." "You already are that person," Reno said. "You became that person the second you noticed her hand in that store." Jack didn't answer. "You want me to come back?" Reno asked. "No," Jack said. "Go to Flagstaff. There's nothing you can do here that isn't already being done." A pause. "I just needed to tell somebody." "I know," Reno said. "I'm here." They stayed on the phone for a while without talking. Just the sound of road noise on Reno's end, wind and engine, and the long open sound of a highway which was somehow the right sound for the moment. At 10:15, Cole called again. "We've made an arrest," she said. "Derek Vance is in custody." Something in Jack's chest loosened by about a degree. "How did he take it?" Jack asked. "He asked for his attorney," Cole said. "That was the first and last thing he said. Not a question, not a denial, not a single word of performance. Just my attorney." She paused, "which tells you a lot about where he knows he is." "What about the motion to suppress the storage unit?" "His attorney withdrew it 40 minutes ago," Cole said. "When they heard about the excavation. There's no point suppressing one piece of evidence when the larger evidence is sitting in a forensic tent." She exhaled. "It's going to be a long process, Mercer. Forensic identification takes time. The journal is being analyzed. We're pulling 6 years of financial records, property records, phone records. This does not resolve quickly or cleanly." "But he's in custody." "He's in custody," she confirmed. "No bail motion yet. Given the nature of what we found, I'm requesting remand." "You'll get it," Jack said. "Probably," she agreed. "I need to call Lena now. I wanted you to know first because you've been part of this from the beginning and because I have a feeling she's going to call you the second she hangs up with me." "I'll pick up," Jack said. He hung up and waited. Twag. She called 11 minutes later. She didn't speak for the first 4 seconds. He could hear her breathing, quick, shallow, the kind of breathing that lives right at the edge of something breaking. "Cole told me," Lena said. "I know." 3 women. Her voice was very small and very careful, like she was holding it in both hands. 3 women under a garage floor. "Yes." "Was Rachel?" She stopped. Tried again. "Was Rachel one of them?" "They don't know yet," Jack said honestly. "Identification takes time. They'll tell you when they know." Lena made a sound, not crying exactly, something older than crying, something that lives below tears in the part of a person where they keep the things they knew but refuse to know. "I found that photograph 14 months ago," she said. "I found it and I put it back and I didn't say anything and I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that there was an explanation and I just wasn't smart enough to, "Stop," Jack said. "Stop right there. I could have." "Lena." His voice was firm and warm at the same time. You were living with him, in his house. You had no phone that was fully yours. You had no money that was fully yours. You had a psychiatrist he selected telling you that your perceptions couldn't be trusted. You had 3 years of being told that what you saw wasn't what you saw. He paused. What you did with that photograph was survive. That's all that was available to you. Surviving. But Rachel's case was open before you ever met Derek Vance, he said. This is not on you. Not a single square inch of what happened to any of those women is on you. You hear me? Silence. I want to believe that, she said quietly. You will, he said. Maybe not today, maybe not for a while, but you will. Mara's voice in the background, low, concerned, close. Lena said something to her sister that Jack couldn't make out. Jack, she said, coming back to him, what happens now? Cole builds the case, he said. You work with the victim's advocate. You work with the prosecutor when they bring one in. You tell the truth about everything you saw and heard and experienced for 3 years in whatever format they need it in, however many times they need it. He paused. And you live your life in the meantime. Whatever that looks like, you find out what that looks like. That last part sounds impossible right now. It is right now, he said. That's okay. It gets less impossible. At noon, Cole called him with something that changed the shape of everything again. Sandra Rowe, Cole said. We spoke with her this morning. Is she okay? She's functional, Cole said carefully. She left Phoenix about 2 years ago and moved to Tucson. She filed that restraining order under a sealed proceeding, which is why it didn't surface earlier. When we contacted her, she thought it was over. She thought she'd gotten away clean. A pause. She didn't know about the storage unit. She didn't know her ID was there. What did she say? She said Derek Vance had a way of making you feel like you were the one with the problem, Cole said. She said he was the most patient man she had ever met in the worst possible meaning of that word. Patient like something that waits. Patient like something that knows it will get what it wants eventually. She stopped. She said she had one moment, when she understood that if she didn't get out, she wasn't going to get out. And she ran, literally. She left her apartment with her car keys and her phone and nothing else, and she drove and didn't stop. Jack thought about the ID left behind in a storage unit, the belongings of a woman who had run so fast she'd left pieces of herself behind. Will she testify, he asked. She said yes before I finished asking, Cole said. She said she'd been waiting 2 years to say yes to that question. A pause. She also said something I need to run by you. Go ahead. She said she tried to tell someone when she left, a friend, and the friend didn't believe her because Derek had already spoken to the friend first, had already framed it as Sandra having a breakdown, had already poisoned the well. Cole's voice was quiet and precise. She said the hardest part wasn't leaving. The hardest part was understanding that the lie had arrived before she did everywhere she went. Jack stood very still. He did the same thing to Lena, Jack said. The psychiatrist, the documentation of instability. He builds the disbelief before the accusation ever gets made. Yes, Cole said, and that's going to be central to the prosecution's argument, that this was not impulsive violence. This was systematic, premeditated, engineered over years. She paused, which is why the journal is the most important piece of evidence we have, because the journal shows the architecture of it in his own handwriting. What does his attorney say about the journal? His attorney says it's private therapeutic writing and constitutes protected personal expression. Cole's tone made her opinion of that argument perfectly clear without her stating it. The prosecutor is going to have a lot to say in response. When does this go to a grand jury? We're moving for an expedited hearing given the scope, she said, probably within the week. Within the week. Jack thought about Derek Vance sitting in a holding cell somewhere in this city, suit replaced by a jail uniform attorney, access controlled and monitored the narrative control he had exercised for 6 years, stripped away by a cadaver dog and a forensic warrant. He thought about what that must feel like for a man like that. He thought he felt like nothing, or like the kind of cold calculation that doesn't feel like feelings at all. Cole, he said, watch the attorney visits. We are, she said. Every permitted contact is logged. He's going to use them to move information, Jack said. Whatever he couldn't handle before we executed the warrant, he's going to try to finish from inside. Through the attorney's office. Through whoever he called 2 nights ago. We know, Cole said. We're already on it. Then, the call Jack wasn't expecting came at 2:17 in the afternoon. Unknown number. Arizona area code he didn't recognize. He answered because he had stopped not answering unknown numbers 2 days ago. Mr. Mercer, a woman's voice, controlled but not completely. My name is Carla Mendez. I filed a missing persons report about 2.5 years ago for my friend Rachel Torres. Jack sat up straight. Ms. Mendez, I got your number from, it doesn't matter how I got it. I know about what they found this morning. It's been on the news. They haven't released names yet, but her voice fractured just for a second, and she put it back together. I need to know. Is Rachel one of them? I don't know, Jack said. Honestly, they haven't confirmed identification yet. But it could be. He didn't lie to her. Yes, it could be. A silence that had years of waiting in it. I filed that report 8 times, Carla said. 8 times in 2 years. Every time I told them about Derek Vance. Every time they said they looked into it and couldn't find sufficient evidence. Every time. Her voice had shifted from grief to something harder and cleaner. And every time I walked out of that station, I felt like I was losing her again. I know, Jack said. No, she said, not unkindly. You don't, but I appreciate you saying it. A pause. The man, you are the biker from the gas station. That's you, right? The news said a concerned citizen made the initial tip. That's one way to put it, Jack said. Rachel would have liked you, Carla said. She was good at knowing who the real people were. The ones who actually showed up. A pause. She would have called you a real person. Jack didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing, which turned out to be the right answer. If she's there, Carla said, on that property, I need you to know that she was funny. She had this laugh that was too big for her body. She loved terrible reality TV and really good wine, and she cried at every dog video she ever saw. Her voice was steady with enormous effort. She was a person. Before she was a case number and a cold file, she was a whole full person. I know she was, Jack said. I just needed someone outside of that police station to know that, Carla said. I've been talking to walls for 2 years. You're not talking to a wall right now, Jack said. She was quiet for a moment. No, she said, I'm not. She exhaled slowly. Will you be at the proceedings when this goes to court? I'll be wherever I'm needed, Jack said. I'll be there, Carla said, whatever it takes. I'll be there every single day if I have to. A pause. She would have done the same for me. After she hung up, Jack sat with Rachel Torres's laugh too big for her body and her wine and her dog videos, and he let those things be real for a minute. Let them be a person instead of a name in a journal. Let them have weight. Then he picked up his pen and added Carla Mendez's name to his legal pad. Twaha. At 4 p.m., Cole texted press conference at 5. Things are going to get loud. Prepare Lena. He called the safe house. Mara answered. Cole's doing a press conference at 5, he said. The media is going to have the story within the hour. Lena's name may come out as a survivor, not as it's not going to be bad coverage, but it's going to be coverage. She's not ready for that, Mara said immediately. I know, but ready or not, it's coming. Does she want to watch it, or does she want to be somewhere else? A brief consultation in the background. Then Mara back. She says she wants to watch it. She says she's done hiding from things. Jack almost smiled. That sounds like someone who's going to be okay. She's sitting at my kitchen table eating soup for the first time in 2 days, Mara said. So yeah, I think she's going to be okay. A pause softer. Because of you. Because of herself, Jack said. Both, Mara said firmly. Both things are true and you need to let them both be true. He let that sit. How are you? He asked. It came out before he planned it. Mara was quiet for a moment like the question had surprised her. I'm angry, she said. I've been watching my sister be smaller than herself for 3 years, and I kept thinking she'd leave on her own, and I didn't push because she always said she was fine, and she stopped. I should have pushed. People in those situations are very good at protecting the person who's hurting them, Jack said. Not out of weakness, out of fear of making it worse. She was protecting you from the truth because she thought knowing the truth would put you in danger. Mara made a sound. That's exactly what she said when I asked her. She was right, Jack said. He was dangerous. She knew exactly how dangerous. And she still managed to press her thumb into her fist and walk into a gas station. Yeah, Jack said. She did. Well, yeah. He watched the press conference from his phone in the motel parking lot. Cole was good, controlled, clear, professional, gave enough to establish the scope without compromising the active investigation. She confirmed the arrest of Derek Vance, confirmed multiple victims were suspected, confirmed the investigation was ongoing and would be thorough. She did not name Lena. She did not name Rachel Torres. She named Sandra Rowe, who had given consent to be named as a survivor who had come forward to cooperate with the investigation. The questions from the press were what they always were. How did this go undetected? Who was responsible for the missed reports? Why did it take this long? Cole answered each one with the particular precision of someone who knew the answers were also indictments of a system and was choosing her words accordingly. Jack texted her after good. She texted back, Sandra Rowe is giving a statement to a reporter tomorrow. She asked me to tell you that she'd heard about you and wanted to say thank you. He stared at that for a moment. A woman he had never met in Tucson, who had run for her life and spent 2 years in a different city, hoping it was over, wanted to thank him for something he'd done 2 days ago that had nothing to do with her directly and everything to do with her. He thought about the gas station, the bottle of water Lena had been holding for too long, his coffee going cold in his hand. He typed back to Cole, tell her I hope she's doing okay. Then he called Eddie. It's on the news, Eddie said when he answered. I know. 6 years, Eddie said. 6 years and 3 women, and it took a biker noticing a hand signal at a gas station. It took Lena Carter deciding to press her thumb inside her fist, Jack said. I just happened to know what it meant. Eddie was quiet. How many years do you think he would have kept going? Jack looked at the sky, the same flat blue sky, same white heat, same indifferent Arizona afternoon. Until someone stopped him, he said, or until he decided to. You think he would have stopped himself? No, Jack said. I don't, sir. The twist came at 7:43 that evening. Cole called him. Her voice had the particular quality of someone who has just received information that has required them to completely recalibrate. We got the forensic preliminaries back on the first set of remains, she said. Rachel, Jack asked. No, Cole said. That's what I'm calling about. A pause. The first remains have been preliminarily identified as female mid-40s, estimated time of death 4 to 5 years ago. She stopped. The dental records we ran them against don't match Rachel Torres. Jack felt something shift. Then who? A woman named Patricia Hale, Cole said. She was reported missing 5 years ago in Scottsdale. Her case was never connected to Vance because she was reported by an employer, not a family member, and the investigation went a different direction entirely. Nobody ever put her in his orbit. 5 years ago. 5 years ago was before the first entry in the journal, or right at the beginning of it. The journal, Jack said. Is there an entry for a woman named Patricia? Cole's silence told him before her words did. There is, she said. The first entry, dated 5 years and 3 months ago. A pause. He writes about her in the past tense. 5 years and 3 months ago, Patricia Hale, a woman reported missing by her employer, a case that went nowhere because it started in the wrong direction. A first entry in a journal that read like the opening of something that had no intention of closing. Cole, Jack said, the other 2 sets of remains. We're still processing. And Rachel Torres. Rachel Torres is still unaccounted for, Cole said carefully, which could mean she's not at the property, which could mean she's somewhere else, which could mean she's alive, Jack said. It's possible, Cole said. We don't have confirmation either way. Jack stood up from the curb he'd been sitting on. Where was Rachel Torres from before Phoenix? Tucson originally, why? And Sandra Rowe is in Tucson now, Jack said. Sandra got out. Sandra ran. What if Rachel ran too? What if Rachel ran in the same direction? Cole was silent for a full 4 seconds. I have Sandra Rowe's contact information, she said slowly. So do I, Jack said. You want to call her, or do you want me to? I'll call her, Cole said. Right now, she paused. Mercer, if this is what you're thinking. I know, he said. Call her first. Find out. The line went dead. He stood in the parking lot and turned his phone over in his hands and thought about a woman named Rachel Torres, who had been in a journal, who had been in a photograph in a drawer, who had been reported missing for 2.5 years by a friend named Carla, who had filed 8 reports and talked to walls. He thought about Sandra Rowe running for her life toward Tucson with nothing but her keys and her phone. He thought about the direction that fear ran when it finally got moving. His phone rang. Cole. Less than 4 minutes. Sandra Rowe, Cole said. Her voice was different now. The control's still there, but something bright underneath it, something he hadn't heard in it before. Sandra Rowe has been in contact with a woman in Tucson for the last 18 months. A woman using a different name. A woman who came to her door one night 2.5 years ago asking for help because she had gotten Sandra's name from a mutual acquaintance and she had nowhere else to go. Jack's hand tightened on the phone. She's alive, Cole said. Rachel Torres is alive. She's been living 40 minutes from Sandra Rowe under a different name for 2.5 years. Her voice cracked by exactly 1 degree. Sandra didn't know she was missing. She didn't know Carla had filed reports. Rachel told her she'd told her family where she was. She told her she was just starting over. Jack sat down on the curb because his legs had made a decision without consulting him. Rachel Torres was alive. She had run. She had run the same way Sandra had run, fast and in one direction and with nothing but herself. She had built a different name over herself like a shelter and stayed inside it for 2.5 years while her friend Carla filed 8 missing persons reports and talked to walls. She hadn't known anyone was looking. She hadn't known she was listed as missing. She hadn't known that the man she'd run from had kept a photograph of her with a date stamp in a drawer that another woman would find 14 months later. Cole, Jack said. His voice came out quieter than he expected. Tell Carla. I'm calling her next, Cole said. I just needed to tell you first because you... She stopped and composed herself. Because you were the beginning of this. He sat on the curb outside a Phoenix motel in the flat heat of an Arizona evening and let the weight of the last 3 days reorganize itself around that single fact. Rachel Torres was alive. 3 women were not. Patricia Hale was 5 years underground under a garage floor, 2 others still being identified. And somewhere in 6 years of journal entries were names he hadn't heard yet, entries he hadn't read, women whose stories were still being assembled from evidence and records in the very careful handwriting of a man who had believed for 6 years that patience was the same thing as permanence. It wasn't. Jack looked up at the sky. Somewhere in Tucson, a woman who had been running for 2.5 years was about to get a phone call that told her she could stop. Somewhere in Phoenix, Carla Mendez, who had filed 8 reports and talked to walls, was about to find out that her friend had the same laugh she always had. And somewhere in a holding cell, Derek Vance was sitting with the stillness of a man who was counting what he had left and finding the number smaller than he'd planned. Jack stayed on the curb for a while, just breathing, just letting it be what it was. Rachel Torres called Carla Mendez at 8:14 that evening. Carla picked up on the first ring the way people pick up calls they've been waiting for their entire lives, not because they expected this specific call, but because some part of them never stopped listening for it. Jack knew this because Carla called him 40 minutes later, her voice stripped down to something that barely held shape. She's alive, Carla said. She stopped, breathed, tried again. She didn't know. Rachel didn't know I'd been looking. She thought she'd told enough people where she was. She thought she was just living. A sound that was somewhere between laughing and falling apart. She cried for 20 minutes. I cried for 20 minutes. She kept saying she was sorry, and I kept telling her to stop saying that, and she kept saying it anyway, Carla, Jack said gently. She's okay, Carla said. She's actually okay. She has a job. She has an apartment. She has a cat named Gerald. Her voice cracked completely on the cat's name, which was exactly the kind of detail that does that to people. She has a cat named Gerald, and she's been alive this whole time, She couldn't finish that sentence. Jack didn't try to finish it for her. He just stayed on the phone until she was ready to hang up, which took a while, and he didn't mind. When he finally set the phone down, the motel room was quiet in a way it hadn't been since he'd arrived. Not empty quiet, full quiet. The kind that comes after something has been resolved that didn't look like it was going to resolve. He sat with it for exactly 2 minutes. Then his phone rang again. Lena. Mara just told me about Rachel, she said. Her voice was different from every other time she'd called him. Steadier, cleaner, like something that had been bracing against a wall had finally been allowed to stand on its own. Good news, Jack said. The best news, Lena said. I didn't know I needed her to be alive until I found out she was. A pause. Is that strange? No, he said. You needed proof that getting out worked, that running worked, that the ending to the story could be different. Yeah, she said softly. That's exactly what I needed. And now you have it. A long pause. Cole called me again tonight. She said the grand jury proceedings start next week. She said my testimony is going to be critical. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the effort underneath the steadiness. She said the prosecutor's office wants to meet with me day after tomorrow. Are you ready? No, Lena said, but I'm going anyway. That's the whole game right there, Jack said. She was quiet for a moment. Will you be in Phoenix when the trial starts? He had been thinking about that. He had Albuquerque waiting and Reno sending him increasingly pointed texts about road schedules and a crew that had been patient, but not infinitely patient. I'll be where I need to be, he said. That's not an answer. It's the most honest answer I have right now, he said. But Lena, you don't need me in that courtroom. You need Cole, and you need the prosecutor, and you need yourself. And you've got all three. She was quiet for a long moment. I know, she said finally. You're the first person who saw, before anyone else. You saw and you didn't look away, and I think I'm going to be processing that for a long time. Process it, he said. Take all the time you need. Okay, she said, and then, Jack, whatever happens in that courtroom, whatever Derek says or his attorney says, or whatever version of me they try to put in front of that jury, I need you to know that I know what happened. I know what was real. He spent 3 years trying to make me doubt myself, and he almost succeeded. But almost isn't all the way. No, Jack agreed. It isn't. I'm going to be okay, she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even quite a statement. It was something she was deciding in real time right there on the phone, making the decision with words, the way you sometimes have to when the decision isn't yet fully made in your body. Yes, Jack said, you are. Boeing. The grand jury returned an indictment in 6 days. The charges were extensive, 3 counts of first-degree murder. Patricia Hale and the 2 women whose identities came through in the second week of forensic processing. A woman named Denise Waller, who had been reported missing 3.5 years ago in Mesa, whose family had been told repeatedly there was insufficient evidence to pursue a suspect. A woman named Monica Reyes, whose disappearance 2 years ago had been categorized as voluntary and adult, who had chosen to leave because she had sent a text to her sister the night she disappeared, saying she needed space and nobody had questioned whether that text had been sent under duress. Monica Reyes, Denise Waller, Patricia Hale. 3 names. 3 families who had been waiting in the particular hell that is not knowing. 3 sets of people who would now have to trade not knowing for the harder, more permanent knowledge of what had actually happened. 3 counts of murder in the first degree. Aggravated assault and false imprisonment charges connected to Lena. Additional charges for Sandra Rowe. The charge the prosecutor added at the end, the one Jack hadn't anticipated, was stalking and criminal harassment across multiple victims over a period of 6 years, supported by the journal, supported by Sandra's testimony, supported by Carla Mendez's documentation of her 8 police reports, and what Derek had said to the mutual contacts who had stopped believing her. A pattern, prosecuted as a pattern. That last part mattered. Jack knew it mattered because Eddie told him it mattered, because Cole told him it mattered, and because the prosecutor, a woman named Adriana Vasquez, who had the courtroom presence of someone who had spent 20 years making sure guilty men understood that a jury box was not the same as a living room, said in her opening statement that what Derek Vance had done was not a series of isolated incidents, but a system. A designed, refined, iterated system that he had operated with the deliberate intelligence of someone who understood human vulnerability as a mechanism. Not a monster, she said, a technician. And that distinction, that precise, devastating distinction, was what made it premeditated in every legal and moral sense of the word. Jack sat in the back of the courtroom on the second day of the trial, which was as early as he could get back from Albuquerque, and he listened to Vasquez lay that architecture out for the jury with the same methodical clarity that Derek had used to build it turned now against him like a mirror. He watched the jury. He watched their faces as they heard the word technician and understood what it meant. He watched Derek Vance at the defense table, still in a suit, still controlled, still assembled, and thought about the diner and the careful grief performance and the words "she's not well spoken" with the fluency of long rehearsal. He was still performing, right now in this room for these 12 people, still calculating the angle, still working the room. The moment that broke the trial open, not legally, the legal outcome was already taking shape. By then came on the fourth day when Lena Carter took the stand. Jack had not been certain she would hold together. Not because he doubted her courage, he had stopped doubting that the day she said no through a half-open car window in a gas station parking lot, but because what was being asked of her was enormous. She was being asked to tell the worst years of her life to a room full of strangers, while the man who made them the worst years of her life sat 12 feet away and watched. She walked in wearing a dark blue dress that Mara had helped her pick, and she sat in the witness box and she looked at Adriana Vasquez and she told it. Not just the gas station, all of it, from the beginning. She told them about the first year when he had been so attentive that she had thought she'd finally found the thing that people talked about when they talked about being truly known by another person. She told them about the first time something shifted a night when she'd come home late from work, without calling ahead, and found a version of him she'd never seen before, cold and precise, and interested in her explanation in a way that had felt like an interview more than a conversation. She told them about how she'd explained it away because the next morning he was back to being the man she loved, and she needed the man she loved to be real. She told them about the escalation, how it was never sudden, never dramatic in the way the movies make it look, how it was incremental, calibrated, always with a reason she could follow, always leaving her wondering whether she had miscounted or misremembered or provoked it somehow. She told them about the psychiatrist, about sitting in that office while a man Derek had selected asked her questions designed to confirm conclusions Derek had already reached, and about signing paperwork she hadn't fully read because she was tired and because he was waiting outside and she just wanted to get home. She told them about the photograph in the drawer, about finding it and recognizing that what she felt in that moment was not surprise but confirmation, the sick, heavy confirmation of a fear she had been calling irrational for months. She told them about the hotline number, memorized, held in her head like a key she wasn't sure she'd ever use. She told them about a gas station on Indian School Road in 118-degree heat and a bottle of water she held too long and a man who noticed her hand. The courtroom was completely silent while she spoke. The particular silence of a room full of people who are not moving because moving would mean looking away. Jack watched the jury, all 12 of them watching her, not with pity, with attention, with the specific galvanized attention of people who are understanding something they may not have understood before about how this works and why it keeps working and what it costs the people it works on. That was the moment, not a dramatic moment, not a Perry Mason moment, just a woman telling the truth in a room where people were finally ready to hear it, and the truth being exactly large enough to fill the space available. On cross-examination, Derek's attorney suggested that Lena had a documented history of perceptual distortion. Vasquez objected on 3 different grounds. 2 of them were sustained. The third the judge allowed, and then listened to Lena's response, which was, "The documentation was created by a professional, selected and paid for by my husband, at a time when he was actively engaged in a campaign to ensure that anything I said about him would be interpreted as a symptom." That's what the journal describes, in his own words, in his own handwriting. The attorney tried to recover, didn't fully. Sandra Rowe testified on day 6. She had driven from Tucson alone. She walked in, sat down, and told her story with the economy of someone who had been telling it to herself for 2 years, working out how to say it cleanly so that when the time came, it would land the way it needed to land. What she said that nobody expected, what even Cole hadn't fully anticipated, because Sandra had kept this part back during the investigation, held it privately, decided on her own when and how it would be used, was about the night she left. She said that the night she ran, she hadn't run randomly. She had run because she had found something. In the back of a closet in a bag Derek didn't know she knew about. She hadn't known what she was looking at. She was 29 years old, and she was looking at personal effects that didn't belong to her, and she didn't have a name for what she was looking at. She just knew with a deep animal certainty that lives below rational thought that she was looking at something that meant she would not survive this relationship. She said she had taken a photograph of what she found on her phone, and then she had put everything back and walked to her car and driven until she ran out of highway. The photograph was on a phone she still had. Her attorney had notified Vasquez's office 48 hours earlier. The photograph showed the interior of a bag containing a wallet with an ID card. The ID card belonged to a woman named Patricia Hale, dated 2 months before Patricia Hale was reported missing. The courtroom did not make a sound. Derek Vance at the defense table made no visible movement. His attorney leaned toward him and said something. He said something back. Whatever it was very short. Jack watched his face. For the first time since any of this had started, the performance was absent. Not broken absent, like a signal that had simply stopped transmitting. The face underneath was not grief, not fear, not the cold calculation Jack had seen in the diner. It was nothing. The particular blankness of a man who has just understood that the variable he didn't account for has been on a phone in a drawer in Tucson for 2 years waiting. He hadn't known about the photograph. In 6 years of careful architecture, with all his patience and all his planning, he had not known that Sandra Rowe had taken a photograph before she ran. That was the thing he had not planned for. Not because he was careless, because she was. Because in the 30 seconds between understanding what she was looking at and getting to her car, she had done something instinctive and fast and completely ordinary, the same thing any person might do in that moment. And that ordinary instinct had just walked into a courtroom and dismantled 6 years of constructed invulnerability. The verdict came on the 11th day of deliberation. Guilty, on all counts. Jack was in the back row when the forewoman read it. He watched Lena, who was sitting with Mara on one side and Diane, the victim's advocate, on the other, and he watched her shoulders do something he hadn't seen them do in the entire time he'd known her. They dropped. Not collapsed, released. Decades of held-up weight setting down. Mara put her arm around her. Lena pressed her face into her sister's shoulder under for exactly 3 seconds. Then she straightened up. He watched Derek Vance stand when the judge addressed him. Still straight, still controlled. The performance had not fully returned, but the posture had the last thing remaining when everything else was stripped away. The physical memory of a man who had spent 6 years believing that control was the same thing as safety. He was remanded immediately. No bail. His attorney sat very still beside him and said nothing. Carla Mendez, 2 rows ahead of Jack, had Rachel Torres' hand in hers. Rachel had driven up from Tucson for the verdict. Jack had not seen her until she walked in that morning, a small woman with dark hair and the particular quality of someone who has learned to be very quiet as a survival strategy and is only beginning to unlearn it. She had introduced herself to him briefly in the hallway before the session began with a handshake. "And you're the biker from the gas station." "That's me," he said. She looked at him for a moment with the direct assessment of someone who has spent 2 years developing excellent instincts about who is safe and who isn't. "Good, she said simply and went inside. Now she sat with Carla's hand in hers and watched the judge announce sentencing proceedings, and she didn't cry. She just held on. That was the whole thing right there. She just held on to the hand of the person who had looked for her, while the man who had made her run sat 20 feet away and stopped mattering. Outside the courthouse afterward, the afternoon was the same violent Arizona heat, indifferent as always, the sky the same hard blue that had been there the day it all started. Lena found him at the bottom of the courthouse steps. She looked different than she had 3 weeks ago. Not in any dramatic visual way. She was wearing the same kind of clothes, her hair the same. But something in the way she occupied space had changed. She was standing fully upright in the way that some people never quite manage, even when nothing has happened to them. Like she had been given back a vertical that had been slowly taken from her and was only now understanding how much space she was actually entitled to stand in. "It's done," she said. "It's done," Jack agreed. "The prosecutor said he'll likely get 3 consecutive life sentences," Lena said, "plus the additional counts." She paused. "He'll never come out." "No," Jack said, "he won't." She looked at him for a moment. "How does it feel to you standing here?" He thought about that honestly. "Incomplete," he said, "because Patricia Hale isn't here. Denise Waller isn't here. Monica Reyes isn't here, and justice being done now doesn't undo the years it wasn't done, doesn't give back what those women lost, doesn't give back what you lost. He looked at the courthouse steps, the people moving around them. I'm glad he's going in. I'm glad it's done, but I don't feel like celebrating. Lena nodded slowly. No, she said. Me neither. A pause. I feel like remembering them. Yeah, he said. That's the right feeling. Carla Mendez walked past them with Rachel, the two of them moving close together the way people move when they have found each other after a long time lost. Carla caught Jack's eye and gave him one nod, not performed, not elaborate, just a nod that meant everything it needed to mean. He nodded back. Mara appeared at Lena's side and took her arm and said something quietly. Lena listened and then turned back to Jack. We're going to get food, she said, all of us. Mara and me and the victim's advocate, Ann Cole, said she might come after she finishes the paperwork. She paused. You should come. I've got a road to get back to, Jack said. After food, she said firmly with an authority in her voice that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago and was clearly not going anywhere. You can get back to your road after food. He looked at her, at the woman who had pressed her thumb into her fist in a gas station and changed the trajectory of everything that came after. Okay, he said, after food. Jenna. He left Phoenix the next morning. The highway opened up in the way it always did, the city falling away behind him, the desert taking over with his flat, absolute honesty. No pretense, no performance, just land and sky and the road running straight to the horizon. He thought about what Cole had said to him the night before over food in a diner. Cole, who had shown up after the paperwork, who had sat across from Lena and Mara and eaten a burger and talked about her own years in family crimes, the cases that had stayed with her, the ones that had broken right and the ones that hadn't. She had said when they were leaving, you know what, this case is going to change for real. Tell me, Jack said. The department is reviewing the domestic violence reporting protocol because of how many times the pattern with Vance was documented and not connected, because of how many separate reports existed in separate systems that nobody was cross-referencing. She paused. That review is going to result in a task force, and that task force is going to prevent this from happening again at this scale, because of a gas station, because of a hand signal that one person knew how to read. He had said Lena knew how to give the signal. She'd seen the campaign. And you knew how to read it, Cole said. You also. Both things had to be true. Both things had to be true. He thought about that on the highway, the miles accumulating behind him, the desert stretching out on every side. He thought about Patricia Hale's family who had waited 5 years for an answer they hadn't wanted. He thought about Denise Waller's people who had been told their loved one had left voluntarily and had spent 2 years not knowing whether to be hurt or worried. He thought about Monica Reyes' sister who had received a text that said, I need space, and had taken it at face value because she trusted her sister and hadn't known there was a reason not to. He thought about all the places where the system had been told and had not heard. Not out of malice, out of structure, out of cases filed in separate systems by separate precincts, with no one whose job it was to look at the whole picture. That was changing now, because of a storage unit, because of a journal, because of Sandra Rowe's photograph on a phone in a drawer in Tucson, because of Rachel Torres, who had run in the right direction and stayed alive and named a cat Gerald, and had no idea that her survival was proof that something better was possible. He thought about a woman at a gas station 22 years ago whose thumb had been inside her fist and he hadn't known what he was looking at. He had been paying attention ever since. His phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He didn't answer it on the road. At the next rest stop, he pulled over and checked it. Lena. A text. I start therapy next week. Real therapy. My choice of therapist. First time I've ever chosen one myself. He typed back. Good. Also, I signed a lease on an apartment. Just mine, no one else's name on it. He read that twice. Just mine, she had written. 2 words that contained everything. A whole life being rebuilt from the floor up, starting with a name on a door. He typed, that's the beginning right there. She sent back, I know. He put the phone away and got back on the bike. The road went straight and long and true, the way roads do when they don't have anywhere to hide. He had noticed a hand, that was all. One small thing in one ordinary moment that turned out to be the thread that, when pulled, unraveled 6 years of darkness into the light where it could finally be seen and named and answered for. The smallest signals carry the loudest truths. And every time someone is paying attention when a signal is given, a door opens that would otherwise have stayed shut, and on the other side of that door, a woman signs a lease with her own name. A friend gets a phone call she waited 2 years for, and a man who believed patience made him permanent finds out that nothing built on silence lasts forever. Derek Vance would spend the rest of his life inside four walls. Lena Carter would spend the rest of hers deciding what to fill her own four walls with. That was justice. Not perfect. Not early enough. Not enough for the women who didn't make it out. But real. Undeniable. Permanent. And it had started with a thumb pressed inside a fist and a man who knew what it meant, and neither of them looking away.